So what does it take to be an entrepreneur? It's a combination of passion. You need flexibility. You really need to be adaptable. You need to be willing to take intelligent risks. You need to understand how to operate lean, because when you're starting, you don't have a lot of money. But probably the most important thing is understanding how to identify needs and disruptive approaches to solve problems. Now, when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, this is one of the few places where the word disruptive is actually a good word. I know those of you who go to school, and if you're told you're being disruptive, that usually is a bad word, but not when it comes to entrepreneurship or innovation. Disruptive means that you're creating change and you're going to create something new. And entrepreneurship takes a lot of discipline and a lot of drive. It doesn't just happen. It's hard, and you have to be willing to kind of plow through those obstacles. Entrepreneurs typically are people who are willing to tackle the impossible problem. And if you kind of listened again to the example that was told, that's an example of, okay, this is just impossible. It can't be done. And if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, someone telling you something can't be done is exactly what makes you want to go tackle it. And that is part of entrepreneurship. You have to, though, be able to balance a very strong vision and passion with assessment and flexibility. Too many entrepreneurs their vision makes them stubborn, which means they are just going to go for it and not listen to anybody. And usually entrepreneurship is kind of a windy path. You're adapting. I've never seen a business plan that in its first incarnation is what the company actually does when it looks back from its perch of success, or has done from its perch of success. And the last thing is, you have to be comfortable with ambiguity, because when you are an entrepreneur, you don't have a grand plan. You don't know what's going to happen, unlike working for a large company or working in some other fields. So entrepreneurship is not for everybody. But if these are things that make you excited, then it's a wonderful choice and a wonderful path. But again, it doesn't have to always mean starting your own company. It can be applied in a lot of areas. So I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation. Why? Well, imagine our world without some of these things. Without safe buildings or bridges. I know that none of you can imagine our world without mobile devices, without the internet, the web, Facebook, Twitter. But what about new materials for our clothes? What about the carbon fiber bikes if you're a cyclist? Or what about the new types of uniforms you wear when you play t-ball or softball or soccer? What about the packaging that our food comes in? What about advances in healthcare, not just medical techniques, not just the medication, but the way you apply the medication, whether it's a patch versus a pill? And what about new forms of energy, new forms of transportation, whether it is into space or on the ground? So can you imagine a world without all of these things? Well, all of these things were brought to you by other things, but at the base, some form of engineering and other types of innovation. And if we don't have a strong base of innovation, then we won't continue to see these things that allow us to work, live, play more effectively. So we already got a great definition of engineering, but I thought it was interesting when I actually went and looked it up in the dictionary. And actually, the first pass of this presentation I sent to my son, and I said, what do you think about this? Because I'm giving this to a different audience than my typical audience. And my son is not an engineer, not a scientist. He is more interested in applying technology, but is, again, not following his mother or father's footsteps. But he came back to me and he said, you know, Mom, you should say that engineering actually is one of the most practical things you can do. And it was funny that it was odd to me that he came up with that, because, again, he's not an engineer. But when you look at the definition in the dictionary of engineering, it says it's the practical application of the knowledge of pure science. So what better way to change the world? what better foundation for actually solving problems than an engineering background? And innovation is something new or different. And it may be in science or engineering, but more and more innovation needs to go across disciplines. And it's the combination of science and engineering with design and art and social sciences or behavioral sciences that are making the real breakthroughs. It's not any one of these disciplines alone. Now, I could talk about innovation for an hour. I won't, I promise. It's the reason why I ended up writing a book, but let me just say a few things about it. First, that it's not enough to just have a good idea, whether you're a person, a company, a country. We don't need one idea, we need sustainable, ongoing innovation, and really what that is all about is a capacity for change. And if there's one thing that you can think about in terms of what drives innovation, is having a capacity to accept change and to initiate change and be open to change. And it's sustainable innovation that drives our economic growth, that changes the quality of our life, and that will address the major problems that we face. But it's also really very personal. And individuals, again, those of you who are young and growing, change is part of your life. Sometimes when we get a little bit older, we start thinking that we're done changing, and the answer is we're never done changing. Again, it's never enough in terms when it comes to being accepting and open to change, and especially in a world that is changing so quickly. Innovation, after all, is about identifying human needs. So if anybody thinks that engineering or science is not about people, you're absolutely wrong. It's all about solving problems that ultimately come down to solving a human need. And sometimes that need comes from just needing to understand something better, to address curiosity. Those are discovery-based innovations. And sometimes it's very specific, which is we need a more affordable way to take care of some illness, or we need a better type of bridge or an electric car. Innovation is very messy. The reason people are uncomfortable often with innovation is that when you're in this process of discovery, you often don't know where you're going to end up when you start. And so you need to be willing to try different things and know that you're going to fail. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but failure is a critical part of innovation. Just like disruptive is a good word when it comes to innovation, failure is not a four-letter word when it comes to innovation. It actually is a good word. And innovation can't be mandated. It needs to be nurtured like a garden and to allow things to grow. Now, I said that innovation was really about having a capacity for change. What does that mean? What does it mean to create an environment, whether it's in your own mind or in your, as you are in school or in a workplace? When I was writing my book and interviewing lots and lots of people, I realized that there were 5 common aspects that I felt together made for a capacity of change. The first one is questioning, curiosity. And those of you, the younger people in the audience, you guys have this down pat. You're always asking questions. And to those of you who are parents, when they're asking questions, don't tell them to stop asking questions. This is the most important part of innovation, which is curiosity and questioning. But it's also very important how you ask the question. Because if you ask a very, very narrow question, you're going to get a very specific answer. Sometimes you want that. But if you want to learn and be thinking more broadly, you need to frame a question more broadly. So as you get into science experiments, for instance, or forming hypothesis, or how you ask questions or framing the question is very important. It's also important to ask questions of yourself and take a look at what you're doing and saying, should I maybe be doing this differently, as opposed to always just asking questions of others. And last, and again, those of you who are close to teenage years will really identify this, the tone in which you ask the question will either encourage innovation or stifle it. If you are judgmental, then the person on the other receiving end of that question is going to shut down and become defensive. And that does not encourage innovation. If you are inquisitive, then it opens up someone's mind. So again, whether it's as a teacher, a parent, a friend, a coworker, or even in your own mind when you're asking yourself questions, when you've just done something not the right way, if you judgmentally say, "Oh, I'm so stupid, why did I do that?" your reaction to it is going to be very different than thinking, okay, what did I just do wrong? How might I have been doing it better? So how you ask the question is very important. Risk is all about failure, being willing to be vulnerable to failure, to try something knowing that you might fail, and to learn from that failure, to pick yourself up and try it again. Openness to imagine, to collaborate, to serendipity. Patience, which is either tenacity if you're the innovator, or if you're funding innovation, it's patience. It's giving innovation a little bit of time. And trust, because without trust, you can't be vulnerable to failure, you can't be open, you can't be willing to take risks. So trust is the foundation of all of these. Now, you can't just look at this slide and say, you know what, I take risks, I'm innovative, or I trust, I'm innovative. You actually need all 5 of these things in balance. If you trust without asking questions, that's blind faith. And blind faith does not lead to innovation. And actually, the best or the most unfortunate example of these core values is it was impatient people who took risks without asking questions, without the openness or transparency to even know what they were taking risks on, that led to the financial meltdown in 2008. And after that, we lost trust. We lost trust in businesses, we lost trust in government, and things kind of came to a halt for a period of time. So these 5 values, again, are really important things to remember, again, as you yourself are learning, or if you are parenting, or if you are teaching, or in the work environment. And fear actually is the single most thing that works against change. And there are a lot of ways you can be in fear. You can have fear for your safety, of failure, of fitting in, of criticism. If you're afraid to take a risk because somebody might criticize you, again, parents, teachers, peers. But fear really works against change. And I will recognize it's actually a hard time to trust right now. It's a hard time to trust that you'll be able to get a job. It's a hard time to trust that there'll be affordable health care or a great education, because the country's not in its best shape at the moment. But we will rebuild it. And really what it's about is rebuilding trust and rebuilding the groundswell for innovation. And the key is to not be afraid, not to take all the threats and problems out there and be overwhelmed and be afraid by them. But the key is to take those challenges or those threats, turn them into challenges, and use those challenges to inspire and to rally. And suddenly they become opportunities for innovation as opposed to problems that we fear.